Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the WICCI Podcast. We've hit the milestone of our 10th podcast, and I'm so happy to introduce my guest today. Her name is Rozelle Laha. From decoding business stories as a journalist with Mint, HT, and the Ken, to leading PR for public companies and unicorn startups, Rozelle has seen the world of communications from various angles, from media perspective, from agency perspective, and even on the brand side. She's got a sharp eye for storytelling and a no nonsense approach to PR, which is so very needed. Rizal believes that the industry is held back by jargon, outdated matrix, and bare minimum mindset. She's on a mission to challenge the status quo and elevate the value of PR. And she's looking at pushing for a reset that the industry truly needs and deserves. Join us as we dive into this interesting conversation around evolution of PR. What are the big challenges that we are facing right now? And what could be the way ahead for somebody who is at the heart of all of it? Today, she joins us as an independent strategic advisor, advising a few clients ranging across sectors and domain. And without any further ado, I would just hand it over to Rizal. Hi, Rizal.
Hi, Garima. Those were a lot of nice things about me. So thank you so much. I've never heard so many good sentences about me in one, like in 30 seconds. So thank you.
But you absolutely
And thank you,
deserve it and
everyone.
own it.
I'm really glad to be here.
I'm so glad that you could make time at such a short notice, right? That
Thank
just
you.
tells a lot about a professional and how keenly invested they are not only in their personal growth but also in the growth of the profession. So that
Absolutely.
brings
I think
me yeah, go ahead.
nobody's too busy for someone. Like it's just a couple of minutes we need to manage here and there. So yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for doing that. So, Rizal, the place where I wish to begin at is that you've got a prolific experience in journalism. And while this pivot from journalism to PR is something that's fairly becoming organic, there was a time when people would look at it from a certain lens, but now it's becoming even more seamless and very obvious that people, that's a career switch that young professionals in the comm space look at. Um, One is tangibly tactically the skill set etc that are needing which is okay, there's a lot of conversation there, but today we'd like to go a layer deeper and understand from a mindset perspective. When you switch from a journalism background to a public relations, journalism being far more independent, right, far more rooted in ethics and integrity, or that's what we would like to believe, to PR, which may at times look at a reputation building function and there could be layers of cosmetic, interventions. What is the mindset shift that one needs to make?
See, Garima, in very simple terms, as a journalist, I was paid to ask tough questions.
Mm-hmm,
And on the PR side, I'm paid to make sure no one asks them.
mm-hmm,
So I think, you have to find the truth before it finds you, right? So the
mm-hmm,
biggest mindset shift is you are a journalist, even as a PR person, but you have to be able to think ahead of that journalist.
mm-hmm,
And how do you do that? So the biggest mindset shift I feel is a lot of people think that journalists are ahead of you
mm-hmm,
in bringing the news to the world.
mm-hmm,
But as a PR professional, I think you need to be two steps ahead of them and
true.
not giving them that pedestal that, okay, they will find the truth before we do. So
Mm-hmm,
you need to know what are the possible areas that might catch fire and have a narrative ready because you need to be able to fill a communication void as soon as it arises because if you don't fill it somebody else will and it won't be in your favor. So I think the
mm-hmm,
biggest mindset shift would be to not say that, okay, journalists are above us and we have to help them to get their story out. That's
mm-hmm,
something most of my seniors keep talking about, and that's not a wrong approach. But how do you really think before they think of your company in a negative light or in a tonality that you wouldn't want to go out in the
mm-hmm,
media? So
mm-hmm,
I think that's the mindset shift that you are actually journalists, two steps ahead of them.
mm, mm. Very interesting when you say that. I remember going back to my classroom days at IIMC, we were told very clearly as aspiring PR professionals, because I started my career with PR, that if journalists work 24 into 7, you've got to work 25 into 8, right? To stay 2 steps ahead. And that ability to foresee, forecast, act in time, and just, you know, catch the trend before it becomes a trend is definitely something that's an eye that a PR professional must have, and it just makes you far more efficient. As a journalist, I do understand that you're looking at social, cultural, economic, business lens, all these lens, and you're playing with what you have in hand, which is facts. As PR person, you may have some insider information as well because you're more cued into the company. But what is that fine balance? How do you develop that ability to foresee? Because that one is being able to see 2 steps ahead, but unless you're in the grind, and when you are younger, how do you sharpen your claws on this skill?
I think at a very simplistic level, read a lot, like know your competitors more than they know about their stories.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing a growth marketeer would talk about, right? Know your consumers more than know your competition more than they know themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? So only if you know, that's how you become a top of mind recall brand, right? So how do you
Mm-hmm.
work on that front? For that, you need to read a lot, not just about you, your
Mm-hmm.
industry, but figure out all the competitors, like the
Mm-hmm.
top 20 of them, perhaps, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is one thing. The other thing is find that sweet spot between what the journalist wants to tell their audience
Mm-hmm.
and what the company wants to tell the world. Because
Yeah.
what I see a lot of the times is that there is a certain CEO telling the comms people that this is a story that needs to go out. And then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, there's this whole Chinese whispering game that happens between the comms person and the agency's client managing team and media team, and it just gets diluted to something that becomes
Mm-hmm.
very difficult to even justify why it is a story in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So reduce the number of people between the source and the journalist, and also be very clear about what you want. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just have that headline in your mind and work with the journalist to tell them why this headline matters to them. And that cannot happen with some of those dear sir madam exploring story opportunities, right? That has to
Mm-hmm.
happen at a very customized level, which is saying that if it is mint, they will write in a certain way, in a certain column,
Mm-hmm.
and a business standard will do it differently, and a business world will
Mm-hmm.
do it differently, and a Forbes will do it differently, because their audience has a different cycle of reading that. The
Right.
newspaper goes
Right.
out tomorrow, right?
Uh-huh.
Or a podcast happens in 2 hours, but
Hmm.
a magazine has to be relevant for at least a month if it is a annual thing, and it's a
And
it has a larger shelf life. So understand the audience of not just your brand, but the
mm-hmm.
newspaper's brand. So there
Mm-hmm.
are different ways of doing it, and a very structured way. I think a lot of young people really miss out on that, because
Mm-hmm.
we just get into the grind from day one. You're like, this is the press release, and just run with it. Just call somebody
Mm-hmm.
50 times,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't even have
Mm-hmm.
a media list, really. So get
Mm-hmm.
your hygiene right, because otherwise you will end up with the same kind of salary that in
Mm-hmm.
the 1900s we have been drawing and retiring with. So you don't
Mm.
want to be. So I think that's very important. So
Perfect.
that's
What
the
I
ROI.
hear you say is that have their hand on the pulse, whatever source it is, right? If it means reading up a lot, if it means having an eye on the competition, also cutting through the bureaucracy of how things could work, and making sure that the hierarchy doesn't come in the way of what you're really wanting to deliver, and keep your eye on the outcome. So if that headline is something that you're gunning for, then see what's going to serve that particular purpose. And in the end, what I also hear you say is intentional pausing, because there's so much around you. Instead of making those 50 calls, maybe just do 5, but do them so effectively that you're able to convert it into what you're desiring. That and I also understand that it's the vehicle and the audience of that medium that are crucial. So if there's a magazine versus a newspaper versus a tabloid versus a financial mainline vernacular, like whatever vehicle you're choosing, just see where it's going, what's its destiny, and who are the passengers that onboard it. Help me understand one thing. You've been a journalist, you've been a PR professional, you've seen it all. What is the role of those personal equations? Like you said that yes, it's very important to have a personalized, customized approach to a particular vehicle that or the medium that you're targeting. But within that medium, say for example, there are four corporate reporters, because larger beats generally there are three journalists who are working on the same beat. And I think one thing that PR is grappling with is with the whole advertorial space taking over and lines merging. We are really losing on the art of connection at a human level, to make friends, to really try and understand what this particular journalist is looking at, and how can I really, create a harmonious space for the two of us to have a constructive discussion and come up with something that serves you as well as serves me. And when I say you and me, I mean serves the journalist for their particular organization and serves me as a PR professional for my own objective, because both of us are serving a certain audience. I'm serving my corporate bosses, and my corporate narrative is what I hold close to myself. And for a journalist, they're serving a particular consumer sect. So, what is the role of those personal relationships? How is that evolving? And in this hyper connected, high decibel world, what is that secret sauce to create connections uh, now?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point, and one of the dumbest advices I ever got in my life that, build relationships and you will be a great PR professional.
Yeah,
Honestly, like, relationships are super important and you have to keep it warm. You have to be
correct.
keep it, very professional in doing that. But three parts to your question. One, is it important? Yes, but it ceases to be important after a point because on the media side as well, the person doing just say aviation doesn't do aviation alone anymore. This guy
Mhm.
is also looking at other beats that are kind of, maybe an auto and aviation journalist is the same guy, or
Mm,
just
mm,
look at corporate at large, right? A conglomerate in various businesses. This person is actually writing on just the conglomerate. So this guy ends up being your beat reporter for a bunch of sectors, not just one. It can be energy, it can be anything, right?
mm,
So
mm,
building a relationship is at a personal level, which is that you are, what is relationship? It's basically this guy can trust you.
mm.
And why should he trust you? Because this guy's whole job is to file a story tomorrow morning.
Got
Can you
it.
give us to this person?
Mm,
क्या आप
mm,
उसके मतलब के आदमी हैं क्या? That's the
mm,
most important
mm,
thing,
mm,
right?
mm.
So at the end of the day, that's exactly your how part of it. How do you build relationships? So be useful to this person. By relationship, be useful
Right.
to this person. Know what this person writes about.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a story every time you speak to them, or give them
Mm.
some trends in the industry that you know that will help this guy put up a nice face tomorrow at the editorial meeting.
Correct.
What else
Mm,
can you do? A Diwali gift is not going to give him a story for the next day. You can
mm,
give 10
mm.
Diwali gifts, a Valentine's Day gift, and an Independence Day message. Doesn't help this person. That's not relationship.
Yeah.
Relationship is a very give and take thing.
Uh,
It's very simple. It's like, if your mother did not make breakfast for you every morning, probably you would have hated your mom as compared to your friend's mother who gave you
uh,
breakfast every morning. As
uh,
as basic as that, maybe not the right example, but I think you get the point, right? Like
mm,
everyone wants you to solve a problem for them.
mm,
So what is the problem you're solving for these journalists? And if there are 20 press releases that the journalist gets,
mm, mm,
how do you stand out
mm,
with the whole relationship that you have built, the way
mm,
you have shown up every time?
mm,
That helps ensure that if there is one small 300 word space in the newspaper
mm.
and there are 20 press releases, it's yours because you are top of mind for the journalist.
Correct. Mm,
So basically, be of use to someone, as simple
mm,
as that. And
mm, mm,
as a PR professional, be useful to your founder, see what
Right.
their North Star metric is. In the same
Hmm.
way, be useful to the journalist and any other stakeholder. Like
Hmm.
that's, I think, a communication gap that's there in
Hmm.
terms of this whole jargon that we call relationship. There is nothing like a
Hmm.
relationship.
Hmm.
वो
Hmm.
मतलब
Hmm.
हर आदमी चाहिए. Be that
Hmm.
आदमी.
No,
That's all.
I completely agree with you because very early on in my career, in fact, the initial 6 months, as the chota bacha of the agency, you are made to do a lot of running around and going on media rounds. This was still the age where if there's a press release, we would take like 100 printouts and go on a media round and distribute this physically as well, the hard copy. And very, very early on, one of my mentors said that, you need to be a resource person more than a relationship person. You need to be a resource person for this journalist. Do not think of so in an agency, there are different clients, set of clients that you service. So, say, for example, if I'm working with hospitality, there is some team that's working on healthcare, there's somebody who's working on auto aviation, just like you said. And, this brief was very simple, go and be resourceful. Say, more than pushing for what you're doing, let them get pulled towards you because you look like, just like you said, काम का आदमी, right? कि इसको बात करेंगे तो something's gonna come out of it. And one question that I feel as a PR professional that we need to keep asking ourselves is, am I of service? Because this can be very non-glamorous as a job. Your job is to make the journalist look good in front of their edit meets and boards, like you said. Next morning there should be something that you made this person richer with for them to hold their ground. And as agency people, we were told that you make the copcom person look good in front of their bosses. Just serve. So consistently we are in the service of the narrative that we are looking at. Maybe that really helps. Tell me more about when you say jargons that come in the way.
Back to the previous point you said, where
Uh,
you say that, it's a service, and that is something I keep hearing.
mm,
PR people are conduits. They
mm,
are the middlemen between the CEO and the reporters, or the
mm.
Copcom and the
Yeah, whatever.
reporters.
Yeah, the bridge.
Why do we downplay it?
Mm,
Isn't a founder a service person between the
mm,
investor and the customers? Isn't the
absolutely.
CFO
Absolutely.
the same, or a HR between the
Mm,
talent, prospective
mm,
talent, and the
mm,
founder?
mm,
Every business is a middleman business.
true.
Tell me one that is not, perhaps, right?
Mm,
Uh, why is it that only public relations professionals keep
mm.
positioning themselves as a middleman
So tell
and
me one thing.
not?
So when you say so, I get the gist of it. That at times there is a question mark on the role and credibility and the weight of this particular bridge. Where, in all honesty, if you don't have the bridge, then neither of the sides can cross and meet, right? We more than a bridge, it's a meeting point for the two, right? So when you say, when we raise these questions, that why does the profession look at itself in a certain light? So are we only questioning, we as comms professional, or questioning our own role, or is it about other eyes that view this role a certain way? Because we're also aware of the narrative internally, right? When it's a marketing marcom person versus a copcom versus a corporate affairs person, we do understand that in that the so one thing that clearly, what my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the bigger the budget, the more the importance. So if the marketing head who's doing media allocation as well as handling a budget of 5 crores, 10 crores, versus a PR agency is at a retainer of 2 lakh rupees per month, which only comes down to 24, 25 lakhs, the investment is as much and therefore the importance is as much. Help me understand, where is this notion coming from in your uh, understanding?
I think before this, you mentioned jargons somewhere,
Mm, mm.
right? Before this, I think you were asking one question around jargons,
Uh-huh.
and then you did this part. So I'll
Switch to
probably,
this. Yeah.
start from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think our biggest problem as an industry is jargon. Like,
Mm.
we love jargons more than results. Narrative shaping, reputation management.
uh,
Um, I can go on and on. Like my
go
favorite is
on, go on. Let people relate to this a little more. It'll
my
be
favorite
fun.
is the my favorite is like add value equivalent.
AVE.
Like
Yeah.
it's like counting Tinder swipes and calling it love,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Or you're
Oh,
that,
wow.
and like someone, counting your Facebook likes and saying, wow, everyone loves me, right? Or whatever,
uh,
right? So it is that we are not talking results. What we are
mm,
doing is we are talking reputation, etc. Your company has a certain North Star goal. Can be revenue, can be orders per day, it can be anything depending on what the company is. Let's say if it is a Swiggy, it would be
mm,
probably, repeat purchases, for instance. Or if it is, Ghana.com, number of
mm.
active users, and so on. Every business works towards that.
True.
You can get 200 clips or 500 clips
Uh,
as a PR professional,
mm.
right? How do you link it to that
Back to
metric?
the business.
Your one metric that matters is probably 10 coverages a month or 10
Mm,
positive mentions.
mm,
How do you
mm.
link it to the
Business
North Star,
results.
right?
Mm,
We often fail to do that.
mm,
I have seen very few professionals doing that connection. That
mm,
end of the day, धंधा कैसे चल रहा है? We don't talk
mm,
about that. What we
mm.
say is we got 500 coverages. It's a long-term reputation game.
Huh.
Bro, we are literally fighting for, a seat at the table, all these
Huh.
things, right?
Uh,
Everyone understands only one language is the business moving forward, right?
mm,
And how do
mm,
you do that? That is the
mm,
biggest, that how do you help them show impact? You got a
mm,
great coverage. Did you get an
mm,
investor call? Did the
mm,
customer come to the point of purchase? Okay,
mm,
your job is
mm,
not to make sure that guy buys something.
mm,
Did it happen, right? Or
mm,
even if it is crisis, right? Uh, how did PR add value becomes
mm,
easy because there's immediate result one sees. I
mm,
personally believe that you can do that throughout the year. Go
mhm,
beyond things that add value equivalent, impressions.
mm,
Like the funniest one is I once was working with a PR agency that came back and told me that this article has been read by 3 billion people.
mm,
That whole, like, one newspaper is read by 3 people, assuming like everyone is picking the same newspaper. But then I come from a family where one person takes the newspaper to the loo and I don't touch that. So only one person
mm,
reads it. And that's a
mm.
Indian household thing, and we all can relate, I guess. No 3 people read the newspaper, perhaps. And there are
Uh,
not 3 people in the country, right?
uh,
And you pick up, your mother has not heard about the brand you were working with.
mm,
She's
mm,
definitely part of that 3 billion count, right? So these are irrelevant things.
mm,
And we are saying that we need a seat at the table.
mm,
We are talking about reputation, etc. No
mm,
doubts about it. We are doing it.
mm,
And as a PR industry professional, I'll any day shout out on top of my voice and say that we are doing this. But when it comes to sitting at the negotiation table, right, you need
mm,
to understand that you need to show them why you are not a nice to have
mm,
department.
mm,
Why
mm,
should people care for your existence in the company?
mm,
And
mm,
when you are sitting there and you are talking jargons, like
mm,
I'm building a reputation, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Of
mhm.
course, the growth hacker who is saying that I'm going to give this many leads, basis this
True.
much
Is
is
going to win.
gets
Yeah.
more budget. And
Mm,
interestingly, I'm telling you, Garima, in my experience, I can only talk about my personal direct
mm,
experience. I
mm,
have
mm, mm.
brands where we have cut down on marketing budgets and
Huh.
plowed that back to PR.
Great.
And those
Great.
companies
So,
have
huh.
been able to reduce the overall cost expenses.
Mm,
And we have been able to show that PR is not a cost center. It's
mm,
not a liability.
mm.
It's not something that, okay, we want to make the PR, the founder look good. We have done a
True.
bunch of other things. And honestly, it's not just focusing on the story. Distribution played a huge role. I
Mm,
went beyond media for that to say that, okay, this is also something PR can tap. right? So
True.
how do you do
True.
those things? So it is very different for different brands. I'm just saying that we need to be open to the idea of saying that we are not a cost center. We are not
Hmm.
just calling the journalists. We can be part
Hmm.
of a boardroom and still talk to the investors and tell the story that matters, right? So I think that really would make a lot of difference in how budgets come to us,
Are allocated to
how
the function. Hmm. So
how
so
how we are
hold
reflected.
that thought, and allow me to do like a bit of a housekeeping, because we've come on this tangent and there are a lot of points that you've touched upon, and that rings so many bells in my head as well, Roselle, because I come from, so from a time when I started working in PR for the decade and a half, and then hanging my boots on the corporate career and getting into the whole teaching, coaching, training space. Um, Today also, when I stand and teach different at colleges, I clarify that we are a reputation function. PR is a reputation function and not a sales function. It supports the sales function. It gives sales function a push, but ultimate conversion happens at a different table. For example, like you just said, that why are we shying away by just hiding behind these jargons and saying, okay, we'll get you A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But because the Z is what matters to you, वो हम नहीं करते. धंधा धंधे का कुछ नहीं होता. बाकी we do everything. We make you look beautiful, pretty, lovely, and stuff like that. But where's the buck, right? Where's the money? Show me the money. And unless I can support you get the money, why will you give me money? Um, what I also hear you say is that for us to be able to pivot to that space of being able to convert money is when PR starts thinking more expansively. Do not get stuck to your idea of PR is only this much, unless we view ourselves as a larger role, as a role that can actually put a foot in the door and open a few more doors, and bring that buck in. Unless we start thinking like that, our of course the boardroom is not going to think like that. Can you give me one, because we're almost nearing the end of this conversation, and I what in you I see that there are so many more follow-up conversations that we can do, Roselle. You started by saying that I don't talk too much, but you talk just on point. So in say 3 to 4 minutes, looking at your experience, can you give me one sharp example of where uh you felt PR as role was far more expansive, and this example that you're saying, that instead of a cost center you became a center that was able to propel growth and sales? Give me, could you just explain that for our young audience with an example, real life, like a situation?
Okay, so you mean where you are helping a certain function achieve their
Targets.
um, metric and therefore the goal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
See, I really feel that I'm not supporting the sales function. First of
Mm.
all, I think that's the mindset where you are a trickle down effect of the larger budget,
Yeah.
right? So
Okay.
I feel that first of all, be on a same level. Don't peg yourself. A lot of companies have that hierarchy, definitely. There's no doubts about it. And that's also because we have not fought enough for our, uh,
Rightful
how people
seat on
see
the
us.
table. Yeah.
So people look at us with a bare minimum mindset. PR
Mm.
is something that will be like saste ka marketing, right? So
Mm.
you have to change that, and we have a long way to go. And the young audience who listen to us, I feel probably can play a huge role by evolving and not just following our footsteps. That's one part. The other part is, I think, a lot of examples. Let's not take marketing as an example. I'm not
Mm.
helping salespeople. Let's say product
Mm.
is a more interesting and much higher budget, and probably we don't even work directly with product in many companies. So when a product launch happens, right,
Mm.
how do you really say that, okay, there's a performance marketing work that's happening?
Mm.
You put a pause and say, these are the number of hours that will be dedicated to bunch of PR initiatives.
Mm.
Can be a campaign around launch, can be social media, can be everything, but that's organic, of course, unlike performance
Mm.
marketing. And monitor the number of people who come on the app that time.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
That's one thing I did in one of my projects. And we saw that the number of people who signed up because of a host of PR efforts across
Hmm.
social media and some of the other platforms where we knew our users were. And that's not something that happened
Hmm.
over 24 hours. We had
Hmm.
been building those channels and platforms with consistent efforts. We had
Yeah.
loyal folks in there. And we
Mm-hmm.
just used smart marketing,
Hmm.
not marketing, sorry, smart storytelling
Hmm.
to reach them. And they
Hmm.
download. For me,
In
the
fact, when you're narrating this also, when you just correct yourself saying not marketing but storytelling, honestly, PR is a part of, at times I also feel that we feel very restricted in terms of using these words also. PR is equally marketing, yeah?
no, basically on marketing, I wanted to just add that point that content marketing
Huh.
is so PR is basically a sadder version of content marketing if you don't monetize it well, right?
Hmm. When you
So
say sadder, you mean stripped down, no frills, without enough investment in it. Is that correct?
perhaps, yeah. Yeah, content
Yeah.
marketing gets even lesser budget compared to us in a lot of
Ah.
cases. So that's why sadder. But I feel that overall, PR can do a lot of things
Hmm.
without money, provided
Hmm.
you spend money on the right kind of talent.
Oh,
If you
wow.
get
Yeah.
somebody with a higher experience
Yeah.
who have been too comfortable in a job for too long,
Hmm.
that's a limiting uh, that's a limiting you know
Perspective. Yeah.
belief
Hmm.
I mean whatever the right term we
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
there. Basically you are stunted by the experience doesn't work in your favor. I have worked with a lot of Gen Zs and I feel that these folks are willing to experiment. They have no legacies that ये नहीं होगा ये करेंगे तो ऐसे होगा. They just go out, do it, and these are very new fresh perspectives. They work for me, like what you just said, that कॉम को अच्छा दिखाना है, right? PR
Hmm.
agency should work. I don't think anybody really succeeds a lot in the new age companies because they
Hmm.
are being guided by the older philosophies
Hmm.
of
Hmm. Hmm.
total mentions, AVEs, and this and that. But there are so many new channels that have evolved over a period of
True.
time, and
True.
it's more about where your audience is rather
Hmm.
than where you can do. So what has happened is um, our whole department and industry has been in this trap of charging for the amount of time we spend
True.
and
Hmm.
not the impact we create. So
Hmm.
when you spend just time, you are not thinking impact anymore.
Hmm.
You are
Hmm.
just running towards those clips, mentions, etc., etc. Whereas
Hmm.
when you are actually thinking impact first,
Hmm.
you are thinking of newer channels. Why
And in
not
fact,
Reddit?
then you will look at the most efficient way of doing it,
Correct.
right? Because you
And
don't
maybe
want to
you work
invest as
less,
many hours there. You want quick results with minimal effort.
and maybe you will work less.
Yeah, yeah. So hold
So
that
there was
thought,
this.
Roselle. Allow me to wrap this as the part one because I can clearly see that there are so many tangents that we wish to open here. Uh, let's wrap this piece and recap everything that we've understood from where PR was to where it's headed and what's the most efficient way of approaching it to talent because we've also gotten into that conversation. On this note, allow me to wrap this part one, and I'm coming back to you right away for part two, which we will release as a follow up to this particular episode. Are you game for that?
Sure, let's set up a time and do it.
Absolutely. We do it right now. I'm coming back.
Sure.
Yeah, I end the recording here. We'll edit
Cool.
this part for them because there's less than a minute to go. I'm logging back
Sure.
again.
We'll
Let's shoot
log in
the
back.
second
Okay.
part.
Okay.
Allow
Thanks.
me to come
Bye.
back. Thanks. Bye.